And then also then we will have a final around 10-15 minutes of interactive question and answer session just to answer the questions of the participants as well. So before we begin, I also want to, because at the end we are always pressed on time, I want to begin by thanking the distinguished panelists, the keynote speakers for joining us and sharing their expertise. I also want to acknowledge IFPRI and also the other partners who have made this event possible. Most importantly, thank you to the participants as well upfront for coming to this session, and because it matters a lot for the rich discussion that we're going to have today. So without further ado, to begin this session, it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker. He's Mr. Suresh Lakshminarayanan. He's the Global Coordinator for Large-Scale Food Fortification with WFP headquarters in Rome. Suresh brings a wealth of experience in large-scale food fortification, and he will provide an overview of the transformative power of food fortification and its role in addressing nutritional gaps globally. Suresh, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Arvind. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me quickly take you through the food systems transformation, focusing more on power of fortification, large-scale food fortification. Yeah. So as you are aware, I think Arvind also alluded to that, there is a heavy burden of malnutrition, undernutrition in a global context. 2.8 billion people are unable to afford at least the locally available cheapest source of nutritious diet. There are multiple angles to it, and many of the countries currently are in the context of either conflict, crisis, or in the face of other related climate shocks, which makes the food systems, which actually fractures the food systems and disrupts the supply chain. So it actually makes the food more unaffordable or unaccessible or non-available. So it's very important to take a look at the current food systems approach and adopt or maybe look at a more transformative approach to see how we could reach the people most in need, our highest risk of inadequacy in the current context, and how we are able to transform that with the power of fortification, which is the topic of discussion today. Sorry. Can you please help me with this? This is the next one. Okay, thanks. So going back to to understanding the overall food systems, let's start with the food supply chain. The supply chain extends from production to processing to storage and distribution, and the entire supply chain where the food is being transported from the farm to the fork. And this operates, the food supply chain operates in a food environment where much of the factors around availability, accessibility, affordability, and also to a greater extent acceptability plays a big role. And if we look at the high-level panel of experts' recommendation on food systems integration or interaction, we see a clear supply-demand ecosystem, and it is operating under a food environment. So towards the right-hand side, we have the consumers and the diets. So for us to actually make an impact or a dent in the nutrition, to make nutrition adequate meals available or nutrition adequate food available in the food system, it's important for us to pivot the entire effort towards improving the diets and moving the diets towards healthy diets. For that, we will have to interact more at the food supply system, demand system, and also at the environment system. So it's a multi-pronged approach that is required for us to make a change or a shift towards healthy diets. And of course, here you could see in the framework there are multiple factors that are driving the decision making, and that is more contextually and locally relevant. That's very helpful for us to understand and act upon to see how we could make the food systems more localized and sustainable. That's very key. There's a lot of globalization of diets moving towards very few cereals, and that's happening. The issue about diversification or the affordability of a diversified diet is becoming an issue due to the crisis and the conflicts, and also sometimes availability. It's important for us to influence all of the factors, make a balance related to the context, and then move forward. So how does WFP approach this, the food systems? How does fortification, especially food, fit into food systems approach, and how does WFP look at the overall food systems approach? So as I mentioned before, we take a multi-pronged approach. We intervene at the supply side as well as at the demand side, and also working with the environment, various actors in the environment, to make sure there is sufficient enabling environment for the demand and supply ecosystem to interact, which will ultimately contribute to a better diet. Specifically in the context of fortification, if we look at going more deeper into how we actually translate this larger thinking into action, we have supply side systems, support to the capacity strengthening to the locally available supply system through capacity strengthening in some of the areas mentioned here as staple food fortification, complementary foods, or localized production of supplementary nutritious foods. And towards the demand side, it is also important that for WFP, what's very critical is those at the highest risk of micronutrient inadequacy or malnutrition are at the center of the overall programming food systems approach. So it is very important for us to look at which are the demand platforms that has this ability or already has the targeting to the most vulnerable, and leverage those institutional demand programs such as the social protection or school feeding program or the humanitarian assistance in a fragile context, that is leveraging this demand system, connecting with the localized supply system to make sure the nutritious foods are reaching the most vulnerable, where affordability gap is much higher. And this, by doing this, it is also important that not only the supply-demand ecosystem, but we need to also intervene at the environment level, making sure there is an enabling policy environment. There is also an enabling regulatory framework for acceptability and the safety of the product that is being produced and provided by various actors, be it government or the humanitarian assistance actors. In this system. So that's much of the work that WFP does, and narrowing down specifically into fortification today, but there are many other interventions that applies a similar supply-demand ecosystem approach, and working at the environment level. And of course, last but not the least, I think yesterday there was also, we had a meeting at the Ministry of Health, and there was one person who distinctly mentioned the importance of nutrition literacy and the importance of the consumer behavior and the consumer's choice in making sure they take the good or the right choice. That's very important. So that we also focus on the social behavior change and trying to complement that with the efforts on the supply-demand ecosystem to make sure the beneficiaries or the people make the right choice to move towards healthy diet. That's the primary focus of translating food system into action. Now going a bit more into fortification, how does that go into action, and how do we implement fortification programs? Just to say that analytics have been WFP's one of the strongest capacities in terms of the fortification, making sure evidence informs policy actions, evidence informs decisions, and more contextually available evidence informs actions. So that's a key area of WFP's interest. And here you could see the cost of diet and the fill the nutrient gap. Those are very important tools that WFP deploys to see which is the most relevant intervention, if fortification is relevant, which staple is relevant, what are the micronutrients that is to be fortified. So the nutrient gap in the population is being addressed by various interventions, and here we're talking about fortification today. And we could also see WFP being largest humanitarian assistance organization. We could see that in the fragile context, up to 60 to 80% cannot afford a nutritious diet. Around the cost of nutritious diet is generally 3 to 6 times more than just the energy diet. And that's where it becomes more relevant for us to look into fortification. Today morning, the main plenary, there was a session on rice, and the speaker established the fact that how the rice pattern has changed and how the calorie intake, especially in Sri Lanka, I think he pointed out that it should be 35%, but it is around 65%. Of course, Sri Lanka is not alone. It's majorly in many of the lower income countries and settings. That's when the income of the household reduces, they move more towards the cereal-based diets. So that one, of course, it is not the best way to go forward, but fortification takes that as an opportunity to at least deliver micronutrients, and that's where cereal fortification, especially rice or wheat flour or other vehicles, become more relevant in the scheme of things. At WFP, how do we approach fortification programs? We intervene, as we mentioned, food supply ecosystem and looking at the environment as well. So one of the key areas the first of the areas would be to look at evidence-based advocacy. We have analytical tools that could explain or that could showcase what is the nutrient gap, which are the interventions that could be leveraged, which are the platforms that could be leveraged, what is the micronutrient that needs to be addressed in a more contextual manner, and that talks to much of the markets and the food availability in the market. So it's more localized solutions that are being provided through the analytics piece. Following which, if there is a need and where there is a need for fortification, then leveraging institutional demands, like I mentioned about earlier, looking at social protection or humanitarian assistance, based on the context, leveraging the demand platforms that reach the most vulnerable and connecting them with the supply system to make sure the nutritious food or the nutritious food is being delivered to the most vulnerable. And last but not the least, what's more important to have to keep the supply-demand ecosystem in balance is the quality. It's important to have regulatory standards, monitoring, and also it is important to have checks and balances in place to make sure the proven interventions are working and working as per the regulatory framework and corresponding to the needs. Some of the enablers that helps us deliver this are innovations. Of course, rice fortification or fortification itself is an innovative approach to leverage the cereals to deliver micronutrients. But other innovations related to process and products based on the context that is suitable and based on that. And also learning from different parts of the world. WFP being a larger organization, we have fortification at least in 60 to 80 countries. So we learn from different regions, adapt our approach based on the context and based on learnings from different regions, which is very critical. So these are some of the major enablers to make us capable to deliver on this larger platform of food systems integration. This is just a quick snapshot based on WFP's implementation, and some of the partners also would resonate with this who are working in fortification. Large-scale food fortification is a journey. It takes time for the ecosystem to develop and also for the ecosystem to adapt and sustain. So, and there are two major areas of two platforms generally. In a developmental context, it is more towards the social assistance, where in a fragile context, it moves more towards the humanitarian assistance. But if you see in both the contexts, analytics plays a very, very critical role in WFP's decision making. It is evidence that informs whether an intervention should be conducted, what kind of intervention, and how best the intervention should be. So that informs, and then later it is demonstrated, then it is adopted by the government and further sustained. Similarly, in a humanitarian context, based on fragile context, there are locally available food systems which can source. Otherwise, we will have to move one step higher to look at regional and global food systems to source. So then we are able to address the needs in a fragile context immediately to the most vulnerable. Yeah, and of course, I am sure many of us will agree to this, is that addressing micronutrient deficiency or malnutrition through a food systems approach is not a one stakeholder work, it's a multi-stakeholder approach. We need different stakeholders to interact in a more positive and enabling environment to make sure this change of improving the diets to healthy diets becomes a reality. So with that, thank you so much. Over to you.
No, thank you so much, Suresh, for that wonderful presentation and setting the context for the following panel discussion on the transforming food systems for better nutrition, the power of fortification. So you have covered all the elements in terms of the areas of focus that we need to look at when it comes to the whole food systems approach or making food systems nutrition sensitive. So we have a very distinguished panel today for the panel discussion to share their experiences and discuss many of these strategies in terms of how we can transform food systems for better nutrition. So let me start by inviting first Mrs. Disana Ratnasinghe, who is the Director General Agri-Technology, Ministry of Agriculture. She has been with the ministry and working in the Department of Agriculture since 1992. She's a master's, done her master's in crop sciences, and she has been a pioneer and has taken a lot of initiatives to develop and promote good agricultural practices in Sri Lanka as well. So please welcome, ma'am. Take your seat. We have Mr. Ramesh Acharya. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Food Management and Trading Company Limited in Nepal, a public enterprise. He's been serving there as the CEO. He has brought a dynamic approach to ensure supply of foods in chronically food insecure areas in subsidized price. And before joining FMTCL, he was the director of the Nepalese Federation of Commerce and Industries and also held many positions there. He is known for his innovative mindset, and he leverages technology and creativity to address challenges and improve livelihoods of people. Mr. Acharya, please welcome to the stage. And no stranger to all of us, we have Dr. Renuka Jayatissa, who is the Vice Chancellor and Head Faculty of Food and Nutrition at International Institute of Health Sciences. She's a specialist in community medicine, a very strong advocate of fortification for a long time. And also she has worked as the head of Department of Nutrition and the Medical Research Institute, and was also a nutrition specialist at UNICEF. And currently she is working as the South Asia Regional Coordinator of the Iodine Global Network, and she's also the President of the Association of SARC Foods in Sri Lanka. And she was also the founder president of Sri Lanka Medical Nutrition Association of Sri Lanka as well. So Dr. Renuka, please welcome. Yeah. Then we have Ms. Frances Knight. She is the lead of the modeling and mapping risk of inadequate micronutrient intake, which we call it as MIMI team, at the WFP Nutrition and Food Quality Services in our WFP headquarters in Rome. Frances is a public health nutritionist with over 17 years of progressive experience in global health and nutrition programs, policy and research. She has a background in analytical and modeling tools for nutrition and an interest in policy translation and uptake of evidence generation. Frances, please welcome to the. That's great. Yeah. So and then last but not the least, we have Nora Hobbs. She is the Regional Nutrition Advisor for Asia Pacific, leading on the nutrition portfolio and partnerships for the region. She holds a master's degree in public health nutrition from the Royal Tropical Institute in Amsterdam and has over 12 years of experience in WFP, both in the countries as well as in the headquarters as well. She has, during the role, different roles in WFP, she has conceptualized and led analytical work to inform systems approach to nutrition in more than 30 countries across the region, across the world as well. So please, Nora, welcome to the stage. Great. So as you can see, we have a distinguished, let me also get the mic. Yeah. So panel here, and I'll be moderating the session as well. Yeah, great. So, so let me start by, asking the first question to Mrs. Desana Ratnasinghe. We looked at the context and we understand that food systems, transforming food systems for better nutrition is an important area of focus as well. So, my question to you, Mrs. Desana, is strengthening the capacity of key players in the supply chain is so critical for introducing and scaling up rice fortification program. So from your experience in Sri Lanka, could you share some insights into how this has been approached? You have the mic here, please. Yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you, Arvind.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Actually, in Sri Lanka, we have very good experience and successful experience with fortification of salt with iodine. But now I am going to speak about rice fortification. The story is a little bit different and also a bit challenging because we initiated this rice fortification to address the deficiency of iron deficiency with school children. So there are many stakeholders involved in this fortification program, mainly Ministry of Health, then Ministry of Education, Ministry of Agriculture, and many other institutes like who are forming standards like SLSI, Sri Lanka Standard Institution, and Institute of Post-Harvest Management likewise. So, actually at first we got the cabinet approval from the Cabinet of Ministers to fortify rice as well as wheat flour from iron and folic acid. Then thereafter the cabinet already approved to carry out the rice fortification program in combination with the school meal program with the support of Food Promotion Board through their modality of the implementation. We have a school meal program which provides school midday meal for each and every school children. That's around 1.08 million school children island-wide. So this rice fortification program also combined with this school meal program. The Food Promotion Board is the leading agency responsible for implementing this fortification program. So they are combining with the Ministry of Education and do this work nicely. And this Food Promotion Board comes under my ministry, Ministry of Agriculture, and was established under Parliament Act. So this Promotion Board, they have previous experience in blending and mixing rice and providing different meals for vulnerable groups. So they have that experience, and also they have the facilities to some extent for blending of rice and making fortified rice. So that's why the Food Promotion Board selected for this purpose. But our target is a little bit high. We have to reach around 500,000 school students within next term. So to reach this target, we already selected the modality of public-private partnership. We selected already 2 private millers as the initial step. I think that's important. We as a government agency, we only cannot achieve that target. So that's why we selected 2 private millers for this program. So regarding this Food Promotion Board, they have to do their own job while coordinating with the the millers. So they have to manage their supply chain, procure rice, I mean the sourcing rice and all the necessary material, and also they have to other side they have to manage the delivery system and the things. Then also they have to identify the gaps and give the solutions. So their role is very big. Meanwhile, they have to coordinate with the millers also, because this is the initial step. And also I have to mention the initial, we have some facilities at the main processing center of Food Promotion Board is at Kalankutti area, that's in North Central Province. But actually the World Food Program has supported very vastly to promote their, actually to enhance their facilities there. They have provided the continuous mixing and blending machine, and with some storage facility, and also WFP supported to develop their laboratory facilities and some infrastructure there. I should have mentioned that also. And then regarding the private millers, the the Food Promotion Board, they have selected 2 millers. They have to go through all the government procedures. They published in government newspapers and selected 2 millers from Ambilipitia and Ampara districts, because we have to reach this school meal program to school children. I told around 500,000 students in 12 districts. So it's not possible to conduct by only themselves. For those millers, consider their qualifications and their facilities. They selected 2 good, actually the capable millers for this process. So from the miller's side, they will they have to sign an agreement with the WFP, and they have to provide fortified rice to the school children as specified by the Food Promotion Board. And also they have to develop their own facilities at their premises. The World Food Program will provide the equal blending machines for the 2 millers too, and they will support to develop their infrastructure there to some extent. So the millers are, they adhere to actually to adhere all the instructions given by the Food Promotion Board, and to actually, they have to add all the, I mean the specifications and all the SOPs, and all the capacity buildings were done by the WFP and with the support of Food Promotion Board. They have to adhere with all these instructions and the things. These are actually for the production of fortified rice. And again, there's a need to produce fortified kernels within the country. When we get the cabinet approval, there was a recommendation that we have to develop fortified kernels within our country. So I think the Path Foundation is going to help us regarding this, regarding that production. So the one investor actually came to the scene, and he is willing to produce fortified rice kernels within the country. I think other than providing fortified rice to the nation, that will be an added advantage by providing economic benefits to the nation too.
Great, yeah. Thank you so much for outlining quite comprehensively what the National Food Promotion Board is also doing, and also highlighting the fact that you are focusing on developing the domestic production capacity as well. Building on that, I think I would like to ask the next question to Mr. Ramesh. Nepal has shown a strong commitment to scaling up rice fortification, particularly, and FMTC plays a pivotal role in this journey. Can you walk us through how building supply chain capacity has helped Nepal in this effort, and also elaborate on some of the, food systems challenges that you faced and how you tried to overcome that as well, so that it's not just about achieving certain things, but there are challenges and how we found solutions also to those challenges. Over to you.
Thank you, Arvind sir. I would like to thank the organizer for providing me the opportunity to be here. Let me start with the nutrition related some data from Nepal. There is about 43% school children are living in the iron deficiency, and about 39% of the adolescent girls and 34% of the women of the reproductive age are living with the iron deficiency. So you can clearly see the nutrition deficiency there. And secondly, why we choose rice for the fortification and as a carrier of nutrition and minerals means there is 50% of the total food supply is rice is acting as 50% of the total food, and about 30% of the total daily calorie is being supplied through rice in Nepal. So and 74% of the total population staying in the remote area are dependent to the processed rice from the commercial rice mills, and about 76% of the total population sitting in the urban area, they are taking rice from the commercial rice mills. So we got that rice is selecting rice is a major carrier to carry the nutrient for the human being there in Nepal. And recently, currently we are supplying 200,000 school children. We are supplying fortified rice to the 200,000 school children in the remote areas of Nepal through the social assistance program of the government. And in near future, we are supplying fortified rice to the 300,000 additional people, school children in the different districts of Nepal. Now, WFP has installed 4 different blending facilities to the FMTC, and we have already blended about 4,000 metric ton of fortified rices, and that is being supplied to the remote areas of Nepal. And in near future, we are installing our own rice fortification, that is a kernel production plant in support of WFP. The government has already allocated the budget, and that has already included in its policy and program activities for this year. So we will produce the fortified kernels in our premises, and we will distribute it to the private sector commercial rice mills, and then they will distribute it to the market. So we have set 3 different level of priorities for the mass scale fortification. Firstly, we are targeting to the people staying in the remote area who are living with very high nutrition deficiency. And in second step, we have targeted to reach to all the school children. And in the third step, we are planning to reach to all the general public, all 30 million people in Nepal itself.
No, that's good to understand. So, you have really clearly outlined on the demand side in terms of the categorization and how you want to reach the population as well. So, on the supply side, what is the area that you're focusing on? Because, when you're looking at it from a systems approach, the environment will also involve that the supply side is also adequately addressed if this initiative has to be sustained as well. So can you highlight on that?
Okay, as you know, there is 3 different tiers of government there in Nepal. One central government, another provincial government, and another local level government. So after federalization, we have also redesigned our organization in the federal structure. That we also have an office, central office in the capital city, and we have 7 provincial offices in the 7 provinces where we have established the large-scale warehouses. And in the local level, we have different sales outlets. So in the central level, we design the policy, and from the provincial level, we maintain the required amount of required quantity of the food grains and cereals, and we supply the grains from provincial level to the local level, and local level is responsible to distribute to the community. So this is how we are managing the supply chain.
Great. And because your model in Nepal is a bit a mixed model where you have both, private sector as well as the social protection mix. Yeah. So any challenges from a systems perspective that you see when trying to address this?
Actually, I didn't see any challenges because our organization has 3 different objectives. We have to work as a we have to work for the production, we have to work for the service providing, and we have to work for the trading proposals. I mean, service providers, traders, and the producer. So we can do any kind of work. So I don't see any kind of hurdles there.
Okay, no. I was more asking in terms of not you as an institution or a government entity, but larger private sector food ecosystem as well. Because one is that you as an organization which has government mandate to basically do these things, procurement, distribution, etc. But in the larger food ecosystem of Nepal, because there are also private sector players as well. So do you see, and how do you interact with them, and what are the opportunities or challenges that you see?
Well, there is a provision that the private sector rice millers have to renew their license every year. So we are enforcing a policy that they must have to install the blending facility in their rice mill to get their license renewed every year. Okay. So once we enforce this law, then we can easily go for the
Great. Thank you so much for that insightful thoughts on Nepal and how you're proceeding there. Of course, the next question to you, Dr. Renuka, improving nutrition, all these efforts that we're talking about is a collaborative effort, and academia plays a key role. And, even in Suresh's presentation, he was talking about analytics and data and evidence, which you're also quite well aware. So based on your extensive experience in nutrition and fortification as well, what are some ways academic institutions can contribute to introducing and scaling up food fortification programs?
I think good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Aravind and WFP, for inviting me to discuss about how academic institutes can play in this role, their role. So whenever we take, all of us know food fortification has a kind of very strong relationship with this combating these micronutrient deficiencies. But at the same time, all the academic institution can become, I think they can be the eyes, ears, and the feelings of the public. So when we really look at the roles, first one, we can take it as evidence generation. I think that is the one of the kind of key principles of the academic institution. They should really generate a lot of evidences on this aspect. Whenever we are starting the new food fortification or any intervention, there are so many positives as well as negatives also. So to counteract this and the negative aspect as well as the positive aspect, I think you need a lot of evidences. So in that sense, especially for the policymakers as well as kind of other stakeholders, even the public sometimes, you need a lot of evidences to be kind of to give it to them. Otherwise, they might come up with a lot of issues. Now, if I take as an example, one of the most successful food fortification program is iodization, salt iodization. So when it was started in 1990s in the kind of our countries, what has happened was there were a lot of negatives like now. Like this rice fortification, when it came up, people are really talking a lot of good aspect as bad aspect. So it came up then with the generation of the evidences by universities and the showing, because universities has place of the running these randomized control trials, even the longitudinal studies. So they are well positioned to run these studies. So with those evidences, most of the time they can come out from that. So I saw that our plenary speaker was showing that sustainability. But now as the iodization program has gone about 30 years now, we are struggling with the sustainability. So not only more than 10 years, because when you start a public health program, intervention, so you have to control it and you have to look at continuously monitor it. So this is another one. And not only evidence generation, then the other thing is monitoring, as well as for the training, capacity building. Then it comes to the knowledge, and the other thing is innovation, as well as transfer in the technology. Because it's not only rice, you can get the other food also. Now, as an example, we are talking about iron deficiency, but all of us know our region, vitamin D deficiency is also coming up. So what next? What food that we are looking at for that? So that type of, then the formulation of the new food and technology transfer, we need universities, and because they are well placed in that type of situation. At the same time, looking at this center of excellence, I think in the center of excellence, then the monitoring part, as well as how can you translate this information to the public communities, because every time the public will also now, not like those days, they get all these multiple posts with the Facebook and everything. So they get really alarmed. So in that situation, you need this academia to address it and kind of reposition them as well as to strengthen it. So this is I hope that in this type of situation, academia has a huge role. So when we take as example the iodization, I think in the lot of universities came up. Even now we know that WFP is working with these, all the efficacy studies coming up from the Thailand, as well as this Costa Rica and them. So all these studies, I think we should really utilize and then put forward whenever we are starting the new programs in the other countries. So overall, in conclusion, I think academia has to play a big role whenever we are starting this type of food fortification programs, as well as they can really look at the magnitude of the issue, and then at the same time cost effectiveness, and the economic things, how it affect the overall the population. So the policymakers will listen to them because if the evidences are there.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Renuka, and I really like the way you presented it, that academic institutions can be the eyes and ears, and also the role that you play in terms of informing policy and how it is important to always have academia and evidence to back up whatever initiatives that you're doing as well. Francis, WFP has always been a strong advocate of evidence-based policy change. Can you share how WFP uses analytical tools like FNG, MIMI to generate local evidence and guide of advocacy efforts?
Yeah, thank you so much, Arvind, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this, and to everybody for coming this afternoon. I think first I want to mention that WFP does do a lot of evidence generation, and as Suresh mentioned earlier, it's something we're increasingly proud of, and we really do see it as a specialty. But we really want to be clear that we're not generating evidence for evidence sake. Our first thing is to go in and really make sure that we're engaging, understanding the context, and finding out what questions are being asked. Can we answer those with the evidence generation tools that we have? Do we partner with others to, they might have a better tool or a better approach, or we can do it together? And then why do we want to answer the questions? What are we actually trying to achieve? Is it just to show that, in the case of fortification, that this is good? Are we trying to get standards, sort of to a place where they're a little bit more likely to contribute to micronutrient intake? Is it to convince the public or sort of provide more evidence that there's a safety element here? So really trying to make sure that anything we do is targeted. I'll talk very briefly about two of the main evidence generation activities that we do. So one is the Fill the Nutrient Gap. I won't go into too many examples because Suresh showed quite a lot of that. Basically, the Fill the Nutrient Gap is a tool, an approach that WFP has been using for almost 10 years now. In more than 60 countries, I believe, was the last count. So we use food price data to and food expenditure data to calculate the cost of diets that would meet nutrient needs, and then compare that to how much people are spending on foods to see whether people could afford those diets. It's a really sort of simple metric just to be able to briefly see what is the gap between what people can afford and then how much it would take to have a nutritious diet. That's a real sort of starting point for engagement, because then you can look at what is needed to fill that gap. There is no one intervention, unless maybe you could sort of drop millions and millions of dollars from a helicopter, but even then it wouldn't be very equitable. But there's no one solution from any one sector that could fill that gap. So it's a really brilliant engagement point for having discussions across sectors, bringing people around the table, or maybe sort of bringing that to the table if they're already around the table, to sort of start contributing to that discussion. And fortification has often come out strongly within that as one of the many interventions that can contribute to filling that gap, whilst also having a discussion about what fortification won't achieve and what else is also needed, or what fortification will also need to be able to fill that gap. The other analytical tool that we started developing about 2 years ago is called MIMI. MIMI stands for Modelling and Mapping the Risk of Inadequate Micronutrient Intake. MIMI was a sort of new type of analysis that we started doing with funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to respond to this issue that for specifically fortification, but also any micronutrient programs and policies, there is a need for data on whether diets are meeting micronutrient needs, whether there are micronutrient deficiencies in a country, whether people have access to foods that could be fortified, what the gaps are there, and who is most vulnerable. But unless every country in the next 5 years has the funds and resources to do a micronutrient survey, they're not going to have access to this. So we're really trying to see what we can do with secondary data analysis and modelling in that short term to address those gaps. So we have two main types of analysis. We either use household consumption and expenditure surveys to estimate micronutrient inadequacy and then model different scenarios, or we've started using, through our data science unit, predictive analytics using machine learning modeling to predict the risk of inadequate micronutrient intake using other sort of variables that are collected more often in national monitoring and international surveys. I have a lot of information if anybody would like more details, but I wanted to speak more to how we're using this. So I'll use an example from India. In India, there is a lot of focus on rice fortification because the government has started providing fortified rice through the public distribution system that reaches about 800 million people. That's fantastic, but as most people probably know better than me, it's not a universally accepted change. So there's still a lot of, I think, discussion, disagreement, and so any evidence to really sort of contribute to the existing evidence out there that this is worthwhile, that this could be useful at least for nutrition, is worthwhile. So we consulted a lot with a technical working group for rice fortification in the country to understand what are your policy questions here. That was the first. How can we show even more evidence, even more proof that this is worth for the government to continue supporting? The second was, is this doing enough? What changes to this program could be made to make sure that even more nutrient gaps are filled? The third was, is it reaching the people who are most vulnerable? And then the fourth is, in terms of also what else could be done, what if wheat provided by the PDS were also fortified? So we've done a lot of analysis there to respond to those questions specifically. I'm happy to show anybody the results that really show that if the standards for fortified rice were improved up to the international level, there would be a much greater contribution to filling nutrient gaps. That because the PDS targets the most vulnerable, it actually is reaching those who have the highest micronutrient vulnerabilities in the country. And that if wheat were also fortified, there would be a much greater coverage across the country of that. And we're not doing this work alone. We work really hand in hand with local institutes, research institutions, because we know that it's much more likely to be understood, accepted, and used in country, but also it's a much nicer way and a more interesting way to work as well for us, quite frankly. So that's a brief answer.
Great, thanks. I mean, that was quite elaborate as well, Francis. I mean, I also wanted to just touch on the point about the FNG analysis, particularly, which you talked about, also has brought about a lot of policy changes in terms of addressing the affordability gap and, bringing about governments actually taking decisions based on that. Would you like to elaborate on that, if some examples that you can share?
Yes, we have. I mean, one example would be right here in Sri Lanka. I think the Fill the Nutrient Gap analysis was done together with local partners in 2018. Yeah. And I want to be in that room. And that was sort of one of the tipping points, I believe, for sort of starting this discussion about, the potential of bringing fortified rice in here and encouraging that cabinet move to fortification. But also for our own programs in the Philippines, for example, it was one of the tipping points for our own country management within WFP. It's a very top-down process to actually mandate we're going to use fortified rice in all of our own programs. That helped build up enough demand and trust within local producers for the government then to see this is feasible, we can do that. Maybe we'll also make it mandatory in our programs.
Sure. No, thank you. Thanks so much. I mean, the points which Francis and also Dr. Renuka mentioned as well also gives the insights in terms of how evidence also helps identify gaps within the food systems and try to come up with policy prescriptions for that as well. So my next question is to you, Nora. I mean, WFP supports governments across Asia Pacific region on improving nutrition. And from your perspective as a regional lead, how has WFP helped governments scale up nutrition interventions like food fortification?
Thank you, Arvind. And I'm also very pleased to be part of this very interesting conversation. So as I am in the regional bureau overseeing WFP's nutrition efforts for Asia Pacific, I feel I'm also connecting the dots between the governments in this region and also the strengths and the capacity that WFP as an organization can bring into these efforts. I just want to highlight the point that was mentioned in the introductory presentation. So a critical step of transforming food systems and increasing availability, affordability of fortified foods for population is to integrate fortified foods into national food programs, like school feeding or any social safety net. And that is a critical step, and it is what we call create this institutional demand, with a focus on the most nutritionally vulnerable, and then applying a lot of tools to help governments to really target and ensure that their strategies are as impactful as possible. So in this step, we see there are 17 countries in this region that have made, that are in this fortification journey that we just looked at. And we found there are some key areas that are really needed. So the first one is the convening of the different stakeholders in every single country. And that is a constant effort. And in order to make sure that on one hand, because we are talking about a food system solution to a public health issue, through a social safety net platform. And then you're also bringing analytics and the national statistics. So you need all these stakeholders to be understanding each other, to be speaking a common language. So I think what we heard about the cost and affordability of diets, that has been a way to ensure everyone could understand that there is this economic cost, which is a benchmark for meeting nutrient requirements. So it means that you don't need to come from a very specific nutrition, you don't need to have a very specific nutrition background, you can really understand how to fill those gaps. So those were tools to try to bring everyone at the same level of understanding of what we're all trying to achieve. So a lot of countries now in the region have made those steps, have formed the groups within the government stakeholders, but also outside of the government, including academia, have updated policies, reviewed the design of some national programmings, and have integrated fortified commodities within their programs. So now we stand at a very interesting time, which is about operationalizing and scaling up those interventions. And I found the presentations from Nepal and Sri Lanka very insightful, because here we really see all the new set of challenges that governments and their partners are facing. And as a food agency, WFP also pulls other strengths from the supply chain capacities that the organization has, the food safety and quality aspects that we heard. So in this region, we're now looking at, we have a regional strategy of 2024-2029. Oops. And yes, we are now looking into tackling these challenges of operationalizing plans. So in order to do that, I'll mention a few initiatives. We're working very much with regional institutions to make sure that these sets of challenges that a lot of countries are facing, as regional team, we can help by working with organizations like ASEAN or other regional partners to see how we can help with standards and norms, so that every single country can also rely on references. So that's one area. We're also supporting through advocacy it is always important to support these country efforts. Also, a lot of capacity building. So, yeah, these in a nutshell are how we look at this.
Great, Nora, for highlighting that. Any, while dealing with multiple stakeholders as well, any challenges that you would like to highlight?
Well, the challenges are to be able to support every single government and partners exactly where they stand and be able to respond to their needs, and also face our own internal challenges of being able to provide that support at the right time. So yeah, those I would say.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nora, for that intervention. And I think we have got a good perspective in terms of looking at it from both the pre-harvest on the agriculture side and the post-harvest, post the food coming into the to the middle of the value chain as well, and also the academia and the data and other aspects as well. So that leaves us into the discussions which the audience might have. We have time for question and answer as well. So let me start by asking the online questions that have come in, and then we will open the floor for the audience here. The first question has been, although it's not about food systems, but more on what role biofortification is playing in combating micronutrient deficiency. How great a role is biofortification playing in combating micronutrient deficiency? So basically the question is in terms of what role do you see for biofortification in this entire food system? Anybody would like to take that question? Dr. Renuka?
I think that is really obvious. The food fortification really help in the different ways. It may be fortifying the food with our commonly consumed food items, or even with as a biofortification. So you can always look at some countries, they have really fortified sweet potatoes with that. So that's another one aspect of it. Or looking at the commonly consumed food in the country, and then you take that whatever which is lacking in the nutrient, you can add into those things. So it will really enhance our food. Otherwise, what we do is we always look at the deficiencies and we go for the supplementation. So this is much better than supplementation, because within our food system we are trying to enhance our food system. So this is much better because we are getting the natural food. Otherwise, we are trying to eat the kind of artificially prepared processed food. So that in that sense, the fortification is more natural, because people are always now talking about the organic food and all these things. So in that sense, the fortification has a better chance.
Sure. Oh, great.
Maybe if I could only add that with biofortified foods, we're talking about improved varieties in general. So it's not only that there's an improved zinc or iron content, but maybe more drought resistant, maybe higher yields, maybe more pest resistant. So I think as the nutrition community, we zoom in on that one thing, and when you talk to people who are working in breeding, that's one of their many focuses as well. So there's multiple benefits.
No, absolutely, Francis. And also, just to add on to that as well, is that biofortification or post-harvest fortification are different strategies. I mean, these are complementary strategies. It's not competing strategies, and context-specific. We can use both of them. The second question is on, with the growing concern for climate and water requirements for growing rice. Can rice be considered as the sustainable food source for fortification in the coming years, is the question. Who would like to? Very interesting question.
Actually, it's very hard to answer, but rice is the staple food for us all. Even Sri Lanka, countries like Sri Lanka, we consume a lot. But actually, biofortification, as you said, it's one good solution in Sri Lanka also. Even for biofortification, we produced now quality rice. While actually working for produce more quantity, we also produce quality rice, biofortification. This biofortification with other materials also another solution, but to this extent, even with the climate change, I don't see any other solution.
Sure. No.
As rice lovers.
Yeah.
Can I just answer that question? I think the rice, though it is a staple food, but the consumption rates are going down. That because with the coming up NCDs as well as sedentary lifestyle, we don't need that much of rice. So then the production, you don't need to have that much of big production. Still with the climate change, I think we can manage with the rice fields, and sometimes we don't need to produce so much. So in that sense, I don't think that another 5-10 years we don't have any problem with the consuming rice.
Yeah. No, and also building on to that is that there's a lot of innovation happening in the agriculture space. We are talking about precision farming, low water consumption varieties of rice and seeds being developed as well. So there is a lot of innovation, and human nature is so agile, and we are full of in crisis we find opportunity. So I'm sure there is a lot of research going on in terms of coming up with rice varieties which are low, have a low water consumption as well. So I'm sure there will be some innovations that will come in the coming years as well, as is happening everywhere. So let me open the floor for audience question. I think we have around, let me check, around 10 minutes. So we can open for 3 questions from the audience. So, yes, okay. So, the order of first 3, yeah? So, over there, yeah, please. Can you just give them the...
And just since we are planning for the future, just a concern that iodization of salt has been a very popular, very successful program. But today we are talking about reduction of salt in our diets. And WHO has virtually halved the recommendation of salt per day. What are the implications on the iodization program then, and the control of deficiencies?
So, we'll take all 3 questions and then we can second one.
Hi, my name is Jasmine. I'm also from India. So my question is basically, we have talked about how food fortification is the answer to a lot of our questions. But what I want to understand is how well is food fortification understood by the community? I mean, a lot of our discussions from morning have been about awareness of micronutrient deficiencies and how associated risk. And how well do community understand, and what does the future pathway look like? I mean, even in India, some of the programs where food fortification has been introduced, there's been very low acceptability, basically.
Sure, great.
So almost the same question that, in Maharashtra and some certain tribal areas, people felt that they are being cheated by plastic rice. I think that then there was a lot of damage control that was done after that. But Suresh or, Francis, do you think that based on these kind of learnings, because I'm very sure that these would be common experiences elsewhere also, that proactive awareness and sensitization, are there some strategies now being planned, because all of this entire huge effort is of no use if it is not being used, right?
Sure.
So I'm
Great.
Pawan from Action Against Hunger India.
Great. So first question, Renuka, Dr. Renuka, would you like to answer?
I think, thank you.
Just switch it off.
Yeah, thank you, Seema, for the question. I think though we are reducing there's a salt reduction effort is ongoing, but at the same time the processed food consumption is going up. So most of the processed food are really containing the iodized salt. So at the moment we are still maintaining, though there's a reduction program. But in South Asia we are talking about the reduction. Actually it has not happened yet. So I don't know how long it will happen, because our culinary system and now cuisines and things, I think people really need that type of flavors and things. But one day it will come. With that, we can always really increase the level of iodine in the salt. There won't be any problem. But so far, there's no problem, because the lot of things, iodine is coming from the processed food also for the people who are now not consuming. So I don't think in the next 5 years we will have any issue about it.
I feel maybe I should hand this to Suresh as well. I'm definitely not going to speak to as an India expert, but I completely agree regarding proactive, learning the lessons from what's happened in other countries and really coming in proactively, listening to the concerns of the community. Why do they have their concerns? But also there's some basic sensitization activities that can be done. I spend my life in numbers and analysis and fancy maps and things, but one of my favorite things to do is fortified rice taste tests. I know it sounds silly, but it's so much fun to sort of put two bowls in front of somebody and challenge them, to taste the difference and then talk through the safety aspects. But that real sort of face-to-face, that can be done at a community level. And I know it is being done by a lot of implementing partners. I think India is a unique case in terms of sort of the discussion about rice. I'll let the others talk about it. But any real sort of strategy will involve this sensitization, listening to concerns and addressing them, as well as just sort of blasting out messages as well. I don't know, Suresh, if you want to elaborate.
Aspect, which was mentioned about, Suresh, would you like to just highlight on that? Because I think community awareness also, and then also quality control in the entire food ecosystem is an important element in terms of, the point which he mentioned about, plastic rice and those kinds of things gaining the mind space of the consumers as well.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think those are two very important points. I think there are examples of FSSAI and WFP in India doing this. There has been a lot of food distributions, or maybe do that taste testing kind of approach. One of the approach that many of the partners, I know some of the partners are also here who work in fortification, is even in a training or any kind of workshop, it's very important to have the food in a part of the lunch or something. So they get really used to it and they turn into champions. So that's the only way. And of course, the issue about plastic rice, there has been, plastic has been gone into many aspects. That's a different discussion. Of course, there is plastic cakes, and so it's very important to systemically approach this more. From our global experience, we see, if you had also seen in my presentation, the consumer demand and also the educating the consumer to make the right choice is a very important aspect. So the way we do in WFP is to also conduct a formative research to understand what is their current level of knowledge, attitude, practices, and come up with behavioral change messages that could be more targeted to the audience and which resonates very well with them. We could give many messages, but if it doesn't resonate with me, I don't really listen to it. So it's important to kind of frame the messages through formative research and a process so that it really resonates with the consumer and they're able to accept it. And there are many instances where we have successfully overcome these challenges. Like I showed the different stages of fortification. Of course, these are initial teething problems. It was there with iodized salt as well. I think I was having a chat with Ms. Renuka earlier. Iodization also had this problem. So every fortification, any new change, there are challenges, but of course, if we are able to address it with evidence and making sure the quality is regulated in a more systemic way, then there is more information and evidence made available to kind of address these myths and misconceptions. Thank you.
Laura, would you like to also highlight on this?
I've just mentioned some programs that integrate fortified rice into school meals. So also to have the youngest in the communities to also be familiar with this these products, so that it's part of them when they grow, and then they also bring that along. So that's also another way.
Sure. We have one final question because we have 7 minutes left, so we can take one more question. Yes, please.
So this is related to the question that was asked earlier regarding the resistance from the community, but I want to also find out about the resistance from the industry, because in Sri Lanka, I am sure, as in other Asian, South Asian countries, government is one of the biggest buyers. So when you have this fortified rice coming into the market, the other millers are losing out on the market, there could be problems. And also political changes could be favorable or not favorable to the very nice model that you presented. That could put a hindrance, the moving forward. So how are you planning to deal with that?
So to deal with this issue, I think we have to go with the private sector hand in hand, taking together with them. Once the government entity manufactures the kernels and they distribute it to the private sector, they will never lose the business. They will continue with their business. So it won't be any issue, I think.
And I feel we can include it as another value-added product, because we have several branded rice in market. So fortified rice also another value-added product. Likewise, I think we can gradually make it a commercial product.
No, that's a very good point, which Mrs. Desna also mentioned about, having value-added products as well. I think, to your point as well, is that private sector industries are very reluctant to, tinker with their brands if they're established companies and all that. But I think what Nora and Francis also mentioned about is the institutional demand, which also caters to some of those concerns from the private sector on engaging on fortification initiatives as well. So great. I mean, with that, before we conclude, I would like to take this opportunity to ask each of the panelists, and I'll start from this side with Nora, is that, if you were to, pick one word to define the transformation of food systems for better nutrition, what would that be?
So one word would be, on my end, convening.
Evidence-based.
Sustainability.
Fortification.
Yeah, advocating.
Advocating. Great. So we have the key takeaways from the session itself, right? A big round of applause for the panelists as well. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your attention. I think we are ahead of time by 2 minutes, right? Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining this session. We will not be having a break. We move back to the final plenary to close. If someone has not yet registered, please sign up at the back with me. I will have the registration sheet with me. Yeah, thanks a lot.